Shabbos, Perikid Aleph, Mishnah Vav, and Perikid Shalom to all. Today we're going to learn Mishnah Shabbat, Perikid Aleph, Mishnah Vav, and Perikid Beis, Mishnah Aleph. And today's Mishnah is being learned B'schos of Shalom Zal moves Gasser Marasiyat V'chayetz Chalatzayim. They should be given for that Sachas Lachan Siat Nishmaya, good health, Parnasa B'Shefa, and Kol Tov Zela, and B'schos Esavas Rachel. She should be Zeicher Fan Reziva Gagon B'Karav Mamish. And Mishnah Vav tells us, Hazark V'Nizkar L'Achar Shiatz Tamiyadai. Someone threw something, and he remembered that he wasn't allowed to do so after it left his hand already. Or he threw something and kalata acher, someone else caught it. Instead of it landing on the ground, someone went and caught it. Or kalata kelev, a dog jumped up and caught it in its mouth. Ashenisarfa, or the thing got burnt mid-air. He threw a paper apron through the air and it went right through someone's bonfire and it just got burnt up mid-air. In all these situations, pater, he's pater. And the end of the Mishnah is going to explain why so. Something similar, not talking about the malacha of haitzah, but talking about throwing something. Zarklas is chabura, a person threw something in order to inflict a wound. Vein ba'adamu, vein ba'behema, whether he was trying to harm a person or an animal. V'niskar atchuloi nasis chabura. He remembered that he's not allowed to make a chabura, he's not allowed to inflict a wound on Shabbos, and he remembered this before he actually inflicted this wound. Pater, he's pater for inflicting this wound. Now the Mishnah explains why this is so. Zehaklal, this is the rule. Kol chayav chatois. Anyone that potentially could be chayav achatas for doing something wrong on Shabbos, einon chayavin, they would not be chayav ad shetei tchilasan v'saifan shkaga. The beginning and the end of the act has to be done b'shaygeg. However, tchilasan shkaga v'saifan zadain, tchilasan zadain v'saifan shkaga, if at the beginning of the act he was b'shaygeg, but by the time the act was completed, he was b'mezid, meaning he knew that what was being done was wrong, or at the beginning of the act it was zadain and the end was shaygeg, Peturin, in such a case, he's pater. Ashtei chilasan v'seifan shkaga. The beginning and the end has to be b'shageg. Now going back to the beginning of the Mishnah, he threw something on Shabbos. He didn't realize it was Shabbos, or didn't realize it was usher to throw. So the beginning of the act is b'shageg. And as the thing's flying through the air, he remembers it's Shabbos, or I'm not allowed to throw something on Shabbos. So that means that by the time it landed, he was bezadain. He realized that he wasn't allowed to do this. So he'd be pater in such a case. Just for further clarification, why he's pater, that's because every act of haitzah has two parts to it, an akira and a hanacha, lifting of the object and placing it down. So since the akira was done with one intention and the hanacha was done with a different intention, he would be pater. And the same thing is if a dog caught it or someone else caught it or if it got burnt up, someone else did the hanacha, he didn't do the hanacha, so he would be pater for that. Moving on to Perikid Beis, Mishnah Aleph, talking about another one of the malachas of Shabbos. Habayna, someone that builds. Kami yivne v'yei chayev. How much would he have to build on Shabbos in order to be chayev for doing that? The Mishnah says, Habayna kol shehu. Even if he builds the smallest amount, he'd be chayev for that. V'amasates, someone who chisels or shapes a stone. V'amake b'patesh uv'amatzad, someone who strikes a stone with a hammer or with a small axe, and that breaks the stone off of where it is. Hakodeach kol shehu, someone who makes a small hole in something. Chayiv, he's chayiv for that. As that called, this is the rule. Kol ha'isa malacha u'malachtem iskayemes b'Shabbos. Someone who does a malacha on Shabbos, and that malacha will last. Meaning, he doesn't have to do anything else, and this malacha was sufficient enough. Let's just take this last case, hakodeach kol shehu. He made a small hole, and that hole was sufficient for what he needed. He needed to put a screw in it, or needed to put a peg in it, and that's all he needed. He didn't need to do any fix-ups, didn't need to do anything after Shabbos. So chayiv, he's chayiv for that. That's because he did a full act, which was beneficial, even though it was very small. Now, Rav Shimon Gamliel says, Af hamaka b'kornas al hasadon b'shas malacha chayav. Even if someone takes on the anvil in the middle of doing work, they're chayiv. Because it's like someone improving his work. Now what's Rav Shimon Gamliel talking about? So we have to understand a few things here. First of all, an anvil is a large iron block that people use to make metal. What's done? So a person takes a piece of metal that they want to shape, they have a big heavy hammer, and they smash this hammer on this piece of metal, which is on this iron block, this anvil, this sadon, and that way they're able to shape this piece of metal into whatever shape they want. Now after every couple strikes of the hammer on the piece of metal that they're shaping, they take that hammer and they strike it just on the anvil alone without hitting the piece of metal. So Gamliel says that if a person does it on Shabbos, he would be chayiv. And why is that? That's because he's being metaken melacha. He's improving his work. He's making sure that his big heavy hammer stays flat and it doesn't get misshapen as he's banging it on this piece of metal that he's shaping, and therefore he'd be chayiv for that. The Tanna Kama argues with Rav Shimon Gamliel and says that striking the hammer on the anvil in the middle of work is not something that he'd be chayiv for. Only once he strikes it on the anvil. When he finishes, that's an isser of makav patish, and he would be chayiv for that. We're going to stop here for the day. Pick up tomorrow with Mishnah Beis and Gimel. For now, everyone should have a wonderful day.